Hello, IB History Scholars, it's Mr. Newcomb. We've just completed Unit 1, Conflict and Intervention, and now let's move on to Unit 2, Causes, Practice, and Effects of 20th Century Wars. Unit 2 is going to be broken up into 4 case studies. The case studies will focus on the Chinese Civil War, Spanish Civil War, First World War, and Second World War. To start off Unit 2, I have a historical thought. War. The intensity of war often unleashes or accelerates numerous forces for change, transforming industry, society, and government in ways that are fundamental and permanent. By weakening or destroying traditional structures or impelling internal reforms, war may create conditions conducive to social change and political modernization. So the big historical question is, can war ever be seen as a positive force within and between societies? While you're marinating on that thought, what comes to my mind is our own American Revolution. Uh, when the revolution is concluded, a new nation is going to be created, the United States. Another possible example here could be at the end of the Second World War, a new international organization is going to emerge, and that will be the United Nations. So here are 2 examples of where war can be seen as a positive force within and between societies. All right, so let's move on to our first case study, the Chinese Civil War, and I want to highlight some long and short-term causes. The Chinese Civil War is going to be in 2 phases. First phase is 1927 to 1937, and the second phase is going to be from 1945 to 1949. In between these phases is the Second World War, which is sometimes referred to as the Sino-Japanese War. Now, when we look at the causes of the Chinese Civil War, one cause that stands out is the social economic conditions. Going into the 20th century, China is an impoverished nation. You will find poverty in the rural and urban parts of China. So when we look at the rural poverty, what is contributing to it, some of the issues that emerge is going to be lack of land, lack of mechanization, the living conditions, and the cycles of famine. There is tension between 2 main groups, peasants and landlords. When we look at the poverty that emerges in the urban parts of China, it can be contributed to perhaps maybe it has a small industrial sector. The working and living conditions is very similar to what you'll find in the rural parts. You do see the emergence of the growing trade unions, and that is going to help contribute to some labor tension and polarization, which will be some pretty dominant issues in the urban parts of China. Now, you may remember from world history that in the 19th century, China is pretty fragmented, and it has a lot to do with the influence of foreign powers. China will be carved up into spheres of influence by European powers, and even the United States will and Japan will enter late into that power struggle in China. But with this influence of foreign powers came at the expense of China. Chinese nationals will try to react to it, the Boxer Rebellion, but the treaties that will be signed by the Manchu dynasty really put China at a disadvantage, and that will contribute to the overthrow of the Manchu dynasty. You'll have the Double Tenth Revolution that occurs in October of 1911, and the Manchu dynasty comes to a conclusion, and you see a creation of a republic. And this republic, though, is politically weak. So in 1912, a kind of a strong leader emerges, Yuan Shikai, and he creates himself a military dictatorship. So any of the concerns that were brought up in the revolution virtually are going to go unresolved. And this rule by Yuan Shikai comes to a conclusion really in about 1915, 1916. And so China is going to break down into the emergence of warlords, so regionalism. So from about 1916 to 1928, warlords are going to dominate the political scene in China. And so these warlords are going to run their territories independently. So China lacks a sense of unity. But it's during this time period, though, several groups are going to begin to emerge. 1919, you'll have a very influential May 4th movement. This is reaction to the end of World War I and the Treaty of Versailles. Chinese nationalists feel slighted by the Versailles Agreement, and that they did not like the fact that their demands were not being heard, and that Japan is going to gain a little bit more influence in China, and that they do not feel that they are being respected by Western powers. And so you have this idea of Chinese nationalism getting stronger. This idea of an independent China is becoming prevalent. And you'll see the emergence of two groups, the Kuomintang, or the Nationalists, and the Communist Party. Now, the Communists and the Nationalists, or the Kuomintang, the GMD, is going to lead to further political polarization. So these are two dominant ideologies that are going to emerge in the Civil War. And so the Communist Party is going to emerge in 1921, and Shanghai is going to be the early center here. And one of the leaders that stands out will be Mao Zedong. And what the communists are going to propose is a very different type of society. They want to eradicate foreign influence and defeat the warlords. They want to relieve the conditions of the peasantry. So the peasants are going to be their base. Restructure society according to Mao. And again, the agents of the change are going to be peasants. But the communists also reflect a sense of nationalism. The nationalists, or the Kuomintang, are going to be led by Sun Yat-sen and Zhang Jiechi. Sun Yat-sen is going to will die, and Zhang Jiechi will emerge as the main leader here. And they create, what we look at the nationalists is that they want to create a more modern, unified, and independent China based on three principles: nationalism, sovereignty, and the welfare of the people. They are very popular among the middle class. So both the Chinese communists and nationalists, they will form an alliance because they want to take on the warlords. If they are going to create a unified China, the warlords need to be handled. So the first United Front is going to be created here. And in 1926, they engage in the Northern Expedition against the warlords. And it's going to be fairly successful. And so by the end of 1926, with that success against the warlords, Zhang Jiechi proclaims himself the rightful leader of China and will begin to enact nationalist agenda. Also, he begins what is known as the White Terror, and that is removing any communist influence that could be in the nationalists or the Kuomintang. And as a result of this purification movement, about 250,000 communists who were inside the Nationalist Party or the Kuomintang would be killed. And so by doing that, it really initiates the first phase of the Chinese Civil War. And that first phase of the Chinese Civil War goes on from about 1927 to 1937. It will come to a conclusion with the emergence of the Sino-Japanese War, the Second World War. And so they will put aside their differences and their fighting, and they have a common enemy, and that will be Japan. The Second United Front was created under the guidance of the Soviet Union and the United States. And so we can see the influence here of foreign powers in a civil war here. And so during the Sino-Japanese War, both the communists and nationalists will be fighting against the Japanese. And when the war comes to conclusion in 1945, the second phase of the Chinese Civil War will begin. So all good feelings is put aside, and they resume fighting as if it never came to a halt in the first place. And so when we look at the impact of the Sino-Japanese War on either the communists or the nationalists, it's going to be different. For the communists or the CCP, they will see themselves strengthened during the war. Mao definitely has solidified his position as head of the Chinese Communist Party and the Red Army. And so the size of the communist territorial control increased. They've seen an increase in their membership and a growth in the size of the Red Army. The weaponry, they captured Japanese weaponry during World War II. They didn't get much help from the Soviets. And their image of being nationalists had strengthened during the Sino-Japanese War. For the nationalists, it was kind of mixed. They did see the size of their army increase, and with the help of the United States, they did get access to better weaponry, and that military assistance will continue in the second phase of the second phase of the Chinese Civil War. Excuse me, but they do have some issues. There's economic pressures because the economy was hurt by the Second World War, and Jiang Jiechi had proclaimed that they were the head of the Chinese government, and so they failed to protect China from Japanese invasion. So with that, the second phase of the Chinese Civil War begins, so game on.